New concerns tonight about that Tampa VA hospital that came under scrutiny while a Southwest Florida veteran was treated there for loss of his limbs. The VA promised to fix things after 4 in Your Corner uncovered those dirty conditions and brought them to the attention of Senator Bill Nelson. 4 in Your Corner's Matt Grant showing you why the hospital is now back under the microscope again.
Well, Patrick, the VA hospital promised to address problems more than a year and a half ago after we and other lawmakers stepped in, but it appears some of those problems are back. Staff Sergeant Alex Dillman says he's gone from one war to another.
If you're injured, you're promised to be, the best care, and I don't think that's what we're getting here.
Dillman is recovering here at the Tampa VA hospital. Last year, he injured his spine in an IED attack in Afghanistan. But instead of getting a hero's treatment, Dillman described substandard care and unsanitary conditions.
Catheters being thrown away in the trash can and leaky bags, that's urine that gets spread on the floor. It wasn't a big deal to them, but it's a big deal to me because I've been in this room for almost a year. I kind of live in this room.
In 2010, we visited the VA hospital after Dan Ashby, the father of Cape Coral soldier Corey Kent, described deplorable situations. Last year, the federal medical inspector made 13 recommendations to improve conditions. Conditions Ashby believes are now resurfacing.
I was disgusted that I'm seeing the same issues.
Ashby returned to the VA hospital this weekend and snapped these photos showing dirty bathrooms, leaky ceilings, missing wood in the elevator, and a hole in the wall.
That tells me that they just put a patch on it to get rid of me, and they didn't fix the problem. So now we're back right where we were before, and somebody else has happened to relive the horror that we did.
We left 3 messages with the Tampa VA, but didn't hear back.
It's just disgusting, and it's back to the same thing as far as cleanliness and care issues.
As far as you can tell, have conditions improved?
No.
And as Dillman works to get better, he hopes the hospital does the same.
I've earned the care. I just feel they should address the problems they have, or at least people should be aware of them.
Okay, well, we are not going to stop fighting for the soldiers that fought for us. You can bet we'll stay on top of the VA to get the soldiers and you answers.
Our 4 in Your Corner investigation sparking changes at the Tampa VA. 2 weeks ago, we told you about complaints of dirty conditions at the James Haley Veterans Hospital. The VA promised to make the changes, so did they? 4 in Your Corner investigator Matt Grant going to Tampa to find out for us.
Well, Patrick, the Tampa VA is one of the busiest in the country, serving 4,000 soldiers a day. So after we started hearing complaints of leaky ceilings and holes in the wall, we gave them a 24-hour heads up that we wanted to see what changes had been made. And we weren't the only ones holding the hospital accountable. Dan Ashby is no stranger to the Tampa VA. In 2010, his stepson Corey Kent came here to get better after his legs were blown off in Afghanistan. But just 3 weeks after arriving, Ashby got Corey out.
It just makes me sick to my stomach.
Describing what he saw as deplorable conditions.
These people put their lives on the line, for God's sakes. Take care of them.
Even Senator Bill Nelson's office called the hospital filthy. But those conditions seem to have resurfaced. 2 weeks ago, Ashby snapped these photos showing a leaky ceiling, a hole in the bathroom wall, and a missing elevator floorboard.
They should have their own staff and their own people going through that hospital checking for these kind of things.
Things the hospital promised us they'd address. So Ashby's returned to see what's changed. And so have we. From what we saw, it looked like dirty floors, a hole in the bathroom wall. Is that acceptable when we're talking about the care of our veterans?
No, it's not.
Suzanne Tate is the Associate Director of the Tampa VA. She agreed to give us a tour of the sites photographed by Ashby.
We took what he had, seriously, and wanted to make the changes.
Changes like stationing a full-time cleaning person at the hospital's busiest bathroom and fixing that hole in the wall.
This is actually a panel that was removed for repairs, and now it is replaced.
Tate says the hospital will replace all of the tiles, sinks, and toilets in their bathrooms by next spring.
We want to replace everything and make it fresh and new and let people have confidence that it's clean.
So this is all going to be replaced, the tiles?
All of it.
Also being replaced are the ice machines. This mini fridge didn't work, so the hospital brought in a bigger one. That elevator floorboard's been repaired, and remember that leaky ceiling? The stain's been painted over. Tate blames ongoing construction.
So was the ceiling structurally sound? I mean, there was no water damage?
No water damage, no mold, no concerns anymore.
To address other concerns, the VA set up a 24-hour hotline to report any cleanliness issues.
We were very concerned when we saw the pictures that Mr. Ashby took, and we took immediate action at that point.
But one soldier's family told Ashby the hospital rushed some of those changes because they knew we were coming.
Well, they cleaned it. And every place that we...
Until 12:30 last night, this morning.
Yeah, okay, that's when they did it? Because they knew he was coming.
They were running all night last night. They were upset. Oh, the Fox is coming, Fox is coming.
Either way, Ashby says he's happy to see some improvements at the hospital taking care of so many heroes.
They were walking around on pins and needles knowing that the Fox was going to be there today, and I think that probably pushed up the timetable a little bit. And that's good. That's what it needs. We need to push up the timetable a lot.
Is a staff shortage at Tampa's VA hospital responsible for a veteran's permanent brain damage? That's what his family claims tonight as we continue to dig into complaints at this Tampa facility. 4 in Your Corner investigator Matt Grant visiting the hospital to find out what happened here.
Well, Patrick, the Tampa VA is apologizing and taking responsibility for what happened. But for a family in agony, those words just aren't enough.
This must be so hard on you guys.
I can't put into words.
For Michael Coleman and his wife Natalie Carnegie, there are no words.
The nightmare does not end.
A nightmare that started last summer. But to know what happened, you need to know Joseph Carnegie. At 80 years old, this decorated Air Force Staff Sergeant served in the Korean War. A soft-spoken family man, he liked to say with every problem, there's a solution. But there are no easy answers here. Last August, while on vacation, Carnegie's sugar levels spiked, and he was taken to the Tampa VA for treatment.
He could talk to us. You know, he knew, he recognized his family, and he definitely did not have brain damage.
His daughter Natalie says she had concerns about staffing levels right away.
The nurse was complaining that she had too many patients. She had 5 patients, was being assigned to 6 patients.
That patient was Carnegie. Because of visiting hours, Natalie said she was forced to leave her father's side. Shortly after leaving, she got a call saying her dad went into cardiac arrest.
We got to the hospital, we were devastated, didn't know what to do.
Carnegie suffered severe brain damage, but Natalie and her husband say no one at the hospital bothered to tell them that until 3 months later.
No one never told us that he was brain dead. We didn't have a clue. We were really sitting, waiting, expecting my dad, to talk to us again.
To make matters worse, Natalie says a staff member told her to, quote, get over it.
That's what they told you?
So help me God to get over it.
What did you say back?
You get over it.
Natalie says the hospital acted negligently by failing to notice a buildup of mucus in her father's feeding tube. She says while her father was lying flat on his back, fluid was able to build up, causing him to go into cardiac arrest. The hospital says it's possible that's what occurred, but they may never know what really happened.
What responsibility does the hospital take in that?
Well, Matt, we're very sorry that this happened, and I personally apologize to Natalie Carnegie.
Dr. Edward Cotolo is chief of staff at the Tampa VA. He doesn't believe staffing levels were an issue.
It did happen on our watch, and so because of that, we have to take full responsibility for that.
Was it due to negligence?
Well, negligence is determined by the court. It was an unfortunate event, and we're very sorry that it happened.
But not as sorry as Carnegie's family. They plan to sue the hospital for negligence.
It's not about a monetary lawsuit. It's about justice.
And love. Natalie's only comfort that she got to hear her dad say that one last time.
I love you.
That's the last thing he told you?
I love you. I'm grateful for what he said. Just makes me fight harder.
Tampa VA officials admit they have been videotaping a brain-damaged veteran against his family's wishes.
The hospital says it's necessary, but the family calls it an invasion of privacy and says the hospital lied to them. 4 in Your Corner investigator Matt Grant live with more on what the hospital has to say about this tonight.
Well, Emily Patrick, yesterday we told you about retired Air Force Staff Sergeant Joseph Carnegie and how he suffered brain damage while in the care of the Tampa VA. But for his family, that was just the beginning. When Natalie Carnegie visited her father at the Tampa VA back in June, her husband noticed something odd on the ceiling.
He said, you know what, honestly, it almost looks like a camera. And I said, ha, 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 you're right.
But it was a camera, installed, she says, without her permission or knowledge, hidden inside this smoke detector.
Is this a hidden camera?
It is not a hidden camera.
And why is it hidden in a smoke detector and not out in plain view?
I can't comment on why that particular brand of camera was chosen.
The Tampa VA's Chief of Staff, Dr. Edward Cotolo, says the camera records video, not sound, and is necessary to monitor 80-year-old Joseph Carnegie's fragile condition. The decorated Korean War veteran went into cardiac arrest on their watch back in August, suffering severe brain damage.
They took him from us. And then now you take his dignity to add insult to injury.
The Tampa VA says it has been using covert cameras for at least 5 years. But Natalie questions why a camera was installed in her dad's private room a full 10 months after he suffered brain damage and after it became clear they were going to sue.
Doesn't it seem like common sense that they would have placed a camera in August, September, October, November? Come on.
The intent of the camera was to monitor Mr. Carnegie's well-being. I think it's a valuable tool, and also I think to allay some of the family's concerns.
But the family's biggest concern, that the hospital kept them in the dark. Natalie says she found out about the camera only after a maintenance worker tipped her off.
He said, as a matter of fact, it's a hidden camera.
And even then, she says hospital staff lied to her.
Another nurse came in and said that it was a sprinkler. The privacy officer informed us that there is no way that they will place a camera in your dad's room.
Dr. Cotolo says at least 40 other patients are being monitored, and because the family was told about the camera when it was installed, it's not hidden.
But the family tells us they were never notified.
We have documentation to prove otherwise.
But the hospital's own documents seem to back up what Carnegie's family told us. In this report filled out by a nurse the day the camera was installed, it appears the family was unaware of the camera. The nurse writes, "Family upset and requesting information about new device on ceiling. Nurse informed family members that she was not aware of the situation." Natalie says the VA came clean the next day after she kept pushing for answers.
I was angry. I was livid. His privacy is being violated while on camera.
Is this an invasion of privacy?
If the family was informed prior to the activation and during the installation, then it was not an invasion of privacy.
But the family feels it is, and they've put up these signs calling the videotaping unauthorized and illegal. When told about the covert camera, a national VFW spokesperson told us that's not what the VA is all about. The VA is not there to sneak around corners. When you find out the VA is doing this to a veteran, it's shocking on many levels. But not as shocking as it is to this veteran's family.
They continue to take away the dignity and the respect that's left. And let me tell you this, it would have been better served to repeatedly rape us. We would have felt better with that than what they have done with us now.
The chief of staff for the VA told me in an interview that the family was told about the camera before it was installed, and they said they had proof. Take a listen.
But the family tells us they were never notified.
We have documentation to prove otherwise.
While the hospital provided a document showing the family knew about the camera after it was installed, they couldn't provide us anything showing the family knew about it before it was put in. We filed a public records request asking for proof the family knew about and consented to the installation of the camera before it was installed. But in a letter today, the hospital tells us a thorough search was performed, and it has been determined that there is no document that fits the criteria described in your request. The VA says Carnegie was the only patient to ever have a covert camera monitor him, and this is now part of a congressional investigation. The response from lawmakers against the Veterans Hospital has been pouring in, and one lawmaker heading up a congressional investigation says there appears to be a cover-up. The chairman of the House Committee on Veterans Affairs has strong words for the James Haley Veterans Hospital.
I'm more than dumbfounded with what's taking place at Haley. I can promise you that there has been a very robust investigation that has started.
Florida Congressman Jeff Miller spoke to us by satellite from Washington. The Republican representative says he's disturbed by what we've uncovered at the Tampa VA.
It's not acceptable for any veteran or any active duty military person to receive substandard health care.
Those remarks coming just days after we told you about 80-year-old Joseph Carnegie. The decorated Korean War veteran suffered brain damage at the hospital, but it wasn't until 10 months later, after the family threatened to sue, that the VA installed a camera hidden inside a smoke detector to monitor Carnegie's condition.
Is this a hidden camera?
It is not a hidden camera.
Then why is it hidden in a smoke detector and not out in plain view?
I can't comment on why that particular brand of camera was chosen.
We asked the hospital how long they've been using these type of cameras to monitor patients.
For at least 5 years.
The family calls this an invasion of privacy and says it was installed without their permission or knowledge, a claim the VA denies.
It would have been better served to repeatedly rape us. We would have felt better with that than what they have done with us now.
But Carnegie's family now has an ally in Congress.
I can't imagine why a covert camera would need to be put in place in any patient's room.
We wanted to know what the VA had to say about this congressional investigation. In a one-sentence statement, we were told, VA has responded to questions about this issue from members of Congress. But Congressman Miller says not so fast.
Well, it appears from what I've read in the media that there has been a cover-up. It's not acceptable, and without question, it sounds like somebody somewhere is not telling the truth. That's part of what we have to do as an oversight and investigative committee, is to find out where the truth is being told and where people are lying.
Senator Bill Nelson, who investigated complaints in 2010, says the cameras raise serious questions and is calling on the Inspector General of the Federal Veterans Affairs Department to investigate.
The family says the Tampa VA retaliated against them after they spoke out about the conditions there. Because of that, they requested that Carnegie be transferred to the Atlanta VA so he could be closer to their home. Well, that happened on Monday morning. The family says the Atlanta VA, quote, rolled out the red carpet for them and describes it as a night and day of difference.
A Fox 4 investigation into the Tampa Veterans Hospital is sparking a congressional probe. The House Veterans Affairs Committee is looking into the VA's use of covert cameras. And as 4 News Corner's Matt Grant reports, the deputy director of the VA now facing tough questions on Capitol Hill.
When Michael Coleman discovered the Tampa VA was secretly taping his father-in-law, he felt violated.
It would have been better served to repeatedly rape us. We would have felt better with that than what they have done with us now.
The VA installed this camera hidden inside a smoke detector to covertly record 80-year-old Joseph Carnegie, a brain-damaged Korean War veteran. His family says the camera was installed without their permission or knowledge, an issue that's now the subject of a congressional investigation.
I want to talk specifically about a video camera that was hidden inside of a smoke detector.
We do not believe that the camera was hidden. We believe that the family was informed.
But the family insists they were only told after it was installed. On Capitol Hill, the VA's deputy director testified the camera was necessary to monitor Carnegie's fragile condition.
This patient, who was comatose and on a ventilator, had to be watched.
At the family's request, Carnegie was transferred to another hospital. Before he left, the VA took down that covert camera after the family complained to Fox 4.
Is your testimony that that is an appropriate way to monitor a patient? Why was the camera taken down?
Well, the patient has transferred to another
prior to the transfer, and I know they've been transferred. Prior to the transfer, the camera was removed.
There's no doubt in my mind that frontline staff were under extraordinary stress, that relationships between the family and the frontline medical staff were strained.
Matt Grant, Fox 4, in your corner.
Reached by the phone, the family of Joseph Carnegie says the VA's response demonstrates a lack of accountability. Joseph Carnegie is now being treated in Atlanta, closer to their home. 4 News Corner's Matt Grant live with more on what the VA said that left one veterans group scratching their heads. Matt?
Well, Emily, the VA testified before Congress that a camera hidden inside a smoke detector wasn't, quote, hidden, and that has one veterans group calling the VA clueless.
How veterans will experience the foyer.
At a sneak peek of Cape Coral's new VA facility, nobody wanted to touch the troubles in Tampa.
Really no comment about what's going on in Tampa. I think the most important thing to talk about is this facility.
But it's the Tampa facility that has Congress taking action after a Fox 4 investigation discovered they used a camera hidden inside a smoke detector to covertly monitor brain-damaged veteran Joseph Carnegie. His family says it was done without their knowledge or permission.
The use of these cameras hidden in smoke detectors, is that anything that you guys would consider using here?
Certainly not something that we think is relevant to the opening of this facility. Whatever we do is in the best interest of the patients.
That our number one priority is safety and security of patients. We accomplished it with that camera.
Last week, a top VA official defended the use of covert cameras before Congress, insisting a camera placed in a smoke detector isn't hidden and arguing it was necessary to monitor Carnegie's health.
Is your testimony that that is an appropriate way to monitor a patient? Why was the camera taken down?
Well, the patient has transferred to another
prior to the transfer.
That line about the camera coming down because Carnegie was transferring wasn't true. The camera was removed before Carnegie left, after pressure from his family.
It's just one inaccuracy after another, trying to cover up what really happened.
Dan Ashby with the National Coalition for Patriots has been complaining about conditions at the Tampa VA for 2 years and feels the VA is trying to cover up what happened.
I think that they're, again, making excuses for what happened. Nobody wants to take responsibility for what happened.
Disturbing new allegations tonight against the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital in Tampa.
It's a facility we've been investigating for 2 years now. In 2010, wounded Cape Coral veteran Corey Kent complained about dirty conditions and substandard care, which the Tampa VA promised to address.
In March of this year, Nick Battles, a Marine, said he was receiving substandard care, saying he had preventable infections and bed sores.
In July, Staff Sergeant Alex Dillman says the VA accidentally left stitches in him and threw his catheter bags in the trash, leaking urine on the floor.
And the family of Joseph Carnegie says their dad, a decorated veteran, suffered brain damage due to inadequate staffing. They say they were not notified until 3 months after it happened. The hospital later began covertly monitoring the Carnegie family using a camera hidden in a smoke detector in his room. And that's not all. 4 in Your Corner investigator Matt Grant live with new disturbing details.
Well, Patrick, despite the Tampa VA's promise to clean up its act, another soldier's family is speaking out tonight, accusing the VA of providing, again, substandard care.
I could not go home at night living with myself if I treated my patients the way that my father-in-law has been treated. I am disgusted.
Fighting back tears, this nursing assistant is livid over how the Tampa VA is treating her father-in-law.
It's negligent care. That's how I feel.
Suzanne Wager says her father-in-law, a 72-year-old Air Force mechanic, was admitted after Thanksgiving, suffering from a lingering spinal injury from Vietnam. But before Ralph Wager was set to be released, he complained of severe pain. The family says they begged the VA to do an MRI.
They found a ruptured abdominal aneurysm. He was arrested to surgery.
After surgery, Suzanne says Wager was only removed from bed once in 3 weeks for a shower.
He basically got weaker and weaker and weaker. He was just laying in that bed.
But it didn't stop there. Suzanne says her mother-in-law found Wager covered in his own urine and feces twice.
He was soaked from head to toe.
She says VA staff told her they didn't notice because they were busy and understaffed, and a nurse who saw what happened did nothing to help.
They didn't even offer to help?
No, she did not offer to help. She left the room.
The VA can't comment on these specific allegations because of patient privacy laws, but tell us in a statement, "We take patient medical concerns very seriously when they are brought to our attention, and I can assure you we are looking into these allegations." Allegations Corey Kent's stepdad has heard before.
You know, it's getting to the point now where when are we going to say enough is enough?
Well, Suzanne's had enough and says it's her time to fight for our veterans.
They have put their life on the line. They come back. The least that can be done is people take care of them when they're in need and when they're sick.
Yesterday, Suzanne Wager told us her father-in-law, Vietnam veteran, was found twice covered in his own urine and feces, and the family was left to clean up the mess by themselves. She accused the VA of being understaffed and says she had to ask doctors to perform MRIs instead of them taking the initiative. Dan Ashby with the National Coalition for Patriots took his stepson Corey Kent to the Tampa VA back in 2010 and removed him after just 3 weeks, saying he experienced similar problems.
And we've heard this time and time again with other complaints that we've had. We had to ask for tests for Corey. We had to have somebody there 24/7 because we were scared to leave him alone. That's not the way this is supposed to work.
It was just last year when the Tampa VA admitted installing a camera hidden inside this smoke detector to monitor 81-year-old Joseph Carnegie, a brain-damaged Korean War veteran.
It is not a hidden camera.
But according to this new report by the Veterans Affairs Inspector General, it was a hidden camera. The report cites several emails where a director writes, "Is it possible for a hidden camera to be placed in the room?" And in another email stresses the camera be hidden, saying, quote, "We don't want the family to know that they are being videotaped." The report concludes the camera's use was reasonable because staff thought the family was deliberately interfering with nursing care, creating small sabotage situations so they can document incompetent care, which the family denies.
It's untrue. It's a blatant lie.
I'm utterly disappointed and shocked at the fact that they audaciously blame the family.
The Carnegies, who now live in Atlanta, say it was a maintenance worker who tipped them off about the camera, which the VA's own chief of police disagreed with, writing in an email, "It will give the impression of concealment, covert recordings, which has other legal consequences." The Carnegies say they're angry that the report cleared the VA.
It's like spitting in his face and spitting in our faces over and over again.
According to the report, of the 178 VA facilities nationwide, none are currently using covert cameras.
They basically put the blame solely on the family, and it absolutely makes no sense whatsoever.
Dan Ashby is president of the National Coalition for Patriots. In 2010, he took his stepson Corey Kent out of the Tampa VA after describing filthy conditions. He now questions how the VA could be cleared of any wrongdoing.
Disgust. I was very disappointed in the system. It basically, the VA says, we can do pretty much anything we want, and nothing's really going to happen.
A Florida congressman now wants a law to protect veterans from being secretly recorded after Four Corner investigator Matt Grant exposed some serious concerns. Matt?
Well, Emily, this all comes after our investigation found the James A. Haley Veterans Hospital in Tampa had been using a camera hidden inside a smoke detector to secretly monitor a brain-damaged patient without the family's knowledge or consent. When Mike Coleman and his wife first turned to us for help last year, they had just found out that Tampa VA was secretly monitoring her brain-damaged father, who was a Korean War veteran. They felt violated.
It would have been better served to repeatedly rape us. We would have felt better with that than what they have done with us now.
It was inside this smoke detector that the Tampa VA installed a covert camera. Natalie Carnegie says she was tipped off by a maintenance worker. Last August, the VA admitted installing the camera, but refused to call it hidden.
Is this a hidden camera?
It is not a hidden camera.
But a recent report by the VA Inspector General found it was a hidden camera, citing a director who wrote in an email, "Is it possible for a hidden camera to be placed in the room? Because we don't want the family to know that they are being videotaped."
I really can't believe that it is legal to install a covert camera in anybody's hospital room.
Speaking from his Washington office, Florida Congressman Jeff Miller says the Tampa VA hasn't been truthful, and he's not satisfied with the Inspector General's report.
I got no good, solid information, and that's what really caused me the most grief. I don't believe that any family should have to go through something like this.
The IG report found the covert camera was a, quote, reasonable way to see if the family was tampering with their father's care, a charge that has the family livid.
It's like spitting in his face and spitting in our faces over and over again.
And that's why Congressman Miller has introduced the Veterans Privacy Act. It would require the VA to obtain consent from the family or the courts before a covert camera could be installed.
Just like a police officer would have to do some type of surveillance.
Congressman Miller calls the use of covert cameras bizarre, outrageous, and a big brother tactic, which he says violates patient trust.
I just don't think that it should be legal.
The VA Inspector General has recommended the VA create a policy addressing the use of covert surveillance cameras that would require, among other things, consent and approval before it could be installed. Live in the studio, Matt Grant, Fox 4 in your corner.